Yep. There you go.
All righty, let's
Part
go.
one. Hey, there's Pammy. Hi, Pammy.
So,
Hi, Pammy.
hi, everybody. I'm Monique Polak, and I think you see on your screen David Byers, and we're here for part two of our workshop about the joy of reading, spreading the joy of reading. And tonight's workshop is called Diving Deeper. And the sort of overarching theme is that last week we talked about strategies to make reading more fun so that people, including the parents, but adults, the kids, pass on the message that reading is fun, that reading is something that shouldn't be fraught and make us anxious like it does for many people, especially for people, kids and adults struggling with learning disabilities. So tonight, though, we're going to go, it's called Diving Deeper because we're going a little deeper. And we want to start with the comment that it's one thing to read words, because that, kids can do, even though that can be difficult, of course. Also, they may need to go slowly. They need help with vocabulary. They may need to have different books with where words are less difficult. Like I suggested the 5-finger technique last week, and you read a page. I'll just review it again. You read a page to a child. Every time there's a new word, the child puts up a finger. If you reach 5 in one page, get a different book. It's fun to have new words, but if it's too hard, it's just going to create more anxiety. So it's one thing to read words, and that's something that, we want to make sure our kids can do that, but it's really another thing altogether to understand their meaning. And that's tonight's workshop, is how to help them find the meaning in stories. So I'll just tell you what we're going to do, and then I'm going to let David start. I'm getting into my teacher mode. That's why I took over from the beginning. So what we decided is we'll spend the first maybe 20 minutes or so, we're cognizant of the time, 20 minutes talking about some books in particular and how we would, we're going to model for you what are the things we would talk to kids about. And again, this could be kids of any age, and you'll see it's going to be relevant for the levels of the books. And then once that's done, I'm going to do kind of a mini writing workshop, because one of the things that we promised you for tonight was we asked people bring pen and paper, because the idea is that we want not only to help kids read, but reading and writing go together, and to get them to do some writing. So I'm going to give you a very basic workshop that you can use as adults if you want to do some writing, that you can use with your kids. And you might have to take a couple of very basic notes, almost like 4 words. So that will be the end. And if there's any questions, we'll of course answer your questions. And maybe Karen, if you see in the chat anything super important going on, because David and I will probably not be monitoring the chat, you can just jump in. And we're a small enough group that just jump in anyhow if you want to. Okay, so David, I think we're ready. We each have 3 book suggestions, and we're going to show you what we would do, why we love the books, and how we would use them with kids.
Okay. For the writing and reading part, I was always told you have to know the rules before you can break them. And I don't think that applies in this particular instance. What we're trying to do is become more comfortable with words in general. For instance, a lady today came in for an English-French dictionary. Her kid's dyslexic and cannot use the one that they gave him, right? He had to have something different, and we were able to find something that was color-coded and had all sorts of various things. I got a very easy book. This is, I don't know if you can see it. Everybody see that? There. I Talk Like a River. It's a spectacular book. And it works from the outside, from the inside out, how the child feels so uncomfortable because he wakes up with all these words. I wake up each morning with the sounds of words all around me. P for the pine tree outside my bedroom window, C for the crow and its branches, blah, 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 and I can't say them all.
Mm.
The pea and pine tree grows roots inside my mouth and tangles my tongue. The C is a crow that sticks in the back of my throat. The M in moon dusts my lips with a magic that makes me only mumble. You see how that's going. His dad pulls him out of school after a bad reaction at school. The kids all make fun of him, of course. And he takes him to the river and he says, you talk like the river. And the river, see how the water moves? That's how you speak. Bubbling, churning, whirling, and crashing. You pull these words out, they're noise words. They're easy to think of. You can write them down and then you put them together, and it doesn't have to be iambic pentameter. It doesn't have to be tick-tock. It can be quasi-poetry. And you don't have to worry when you're putting things out to get paragraphs and things. You can simply put the words down and get more comfortable and enjoy yourself. And that builds the self-confidence that you can move on with. What do you think, Monique?
I think that's great. And I think, again, for kids, we each tried to use one book in particular that might have an extra appeal for kids with disabilities. Although we made sure not to only do those books, because all books, like if approached in the right way. But I love that idea of that book. And I had never heard of it before till we talked about it today. And it's illustrated by Sydney Smith. And he's a marvelous Canadian illustrator. I happen to be Facebook friends with him, so I'm extra proud. He's a doll. So, and his work is gorgeous. So let me do my first book. Mine, I can even do it more quickly. It's not the one that has to do with a disability, but it is an extraordinary book. And it's actually by my other special, like someone I really admire, Canadian illustrator, who I met at the same time as Sydney Smith, because we were at the same conference, Matt James. And I know he's another one that Babar's got all his books. So this one's called The Funeral. And it is an astonishing book because it's a funeral from a child's point of view. And the pictures are amazing. It starts, look, ring. So very basic. I mean, and there's a phone call and they find out that an uncle has died. Here's the old phone, right? And you get all the kids driving. I won't tell you the whole story. And the kids getting impatient in the church and remembering the old uncle that's died and seeing people being sad. And the photograph, there's a drawing of the photograph of the old uncle, and the kids desire to go play, and they do play in the field outside the church afterwards. And the thing about this book is I've seen it work with kids at my school. I've read it to my students when I teach writing for children, and they're 17 and 18 years old, and they love it. The whole room goes quiet. And I have a obsession, many obsessions, but one of them is death. And kids' books almost always deal with death, right? I think I mentioned this last time as well, because it's like, I'm thinking about this so often, right? And this is like groundbreaking book because nobody ever did it before. No one ever did. This is a picture book. You could read it to a 4-year-old. And you can also read it to, I think I told you, my boyfriend's 64, I'm 61, so he's not that much older than me. But anyway, I read it to him, right? It's beautiful. And like you say in French, ça vaut la peine, it's beautiful. And even to discuss, like death is such a difficult subject to discuss. Funerals, one of my friends, the receptionist at Marinopolis, I saw her yesterday, and she said she's having a lot of anxiety herself about her daughter going to kindergarten. I'm like, there's books, check, go. She doesn't live close to Babar. I would have sent her right into you, right? But she should, there's
get online and order, but
exactly.
There's tons of them. There's tons of them. And you get to it all sorts of different ways. And
there's even a field, I'll put it in the chat, but there's a field called bibliotherapy, where like there's books to help you with things, and not just a book like how to get over going to school. Sometimes reading fiction, this is a made up little story, right? But even in a made up story, there's something that we can gain from it. And it
Show the title, Mo.
the title page.
Yeah,
Or the-
no, just the title. That's what it turns into, right?
The title here, the
Yeah.
funeral.
It turns into the funeral.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. You know what? You see, this is why it's important to read books together.
Yeah.
I've read this so many times and I never saw it as the funeral.
Yeah.
He's right. He's totally right. See, that's the other joy of reading. Honestly, I have read it 100 times, and I've read it to my classes many times and my friends, and I never saw it as the funeral. Yes, that's great. And it's also written by Matt James, written and illustrated by him. Okay, David, your turn. Thanks for the funeral. Yes.
No problem. All right, there we go. Oh, there we go. There's a bird on your head. There, you can see that.
Oh, it's Mo Willems. I love him.
Yeah, Mo Willems, brilliant, but simple. There's little pictures that anybody could do. And then it's a simple story with lots and lots of repetition. So the kids can repeat themselves and then just change it ever so slightly. There's a bird on your head. There's a bird on my head. Ah! Is there a bird on my head now? No, the bird flies away. Now there are two birds on your head. You know, and it builds through the story. Then there's two birds, then there's eggs, then there's a nest, and then there's eggs, and then there's chicks. And then Piggy tells Elephant Gerald and Piggy, these guys are brilliant. Ask them politely if they would go somewhere else. So they do. And end up on Piggy's head. You guys can see that. There you go. So simple, not hard. You don't have to be Shakespeare. It doesn't have to be a book report that has so many words and so much time and all the rest. Simply do a little back and forth, a call and response, like the songs. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? Why are you doing this? I don't know why I'm doing this, you see. So that it gets the repetition in, and you can pull in words as you go. So that's that.
I was going to jump in here. I'm putting a few notes in the chat, and I just wrote participation, and that's taking like repetition lets kids participate, and that gives a big sense of mastery. That's like,
Right.
I can be part of this story and I get it. And you can do that in so many ways. Like even like what I'm be teaching next week, the story of the Three Little Pigs, one of my favorite fairy tales. So again, even 4-year-olds, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down, right? So
Even 71-year-olds, I can play
Exactly.
at this Zoom and I can say a few words, and I mean it's huge for me that I'm able to do this. And I remember that like they say, that marvelous feeling. Wow, I'm participating. I put in my 2 cents
And if
worth.
we feel at our age good about that, imagine when you're a little kid, because when you're a kid, you have so much to learn. And if you're a kid with a learning disability, right, where it's harder to master things, and you already you begin with a sense that you're not as good as the rest. So we need to do things to give them that possibility of mastery. One of it's just like find them the right book, and talk to people, like talk to them at Babar. That's why as soon as that woman told me, oh, I'm having anxiety, my kid's having anxiety, it's like, get yourself online, find a book. There are a million books on this. I wish I had more time. I would have helped her do it today. Okay, my second one, I'll just do it briefly. The Phone Booth in Mr. Hirota's Garden. And this is written by Heather Smith. Again, a name worth noting because she's a very fine, brilliant, I'd say, Canadian children's writer. And it's illustrated by Rachel Wada. And it's based on a true story. Heather read about this in the newspaper. And it takes place in Japan after the tsunami. Okay, which we most of us remember. And she read about this a village where there were many, many deaths and people were devastated and mourning. So once again, we're on this theme of death again, right? And one of the villagers, Mr. Hirota, he set up a phone booth and the phone didn't work, but people were able to go to the phone booth and talk to the people that they missed. And that's what this story is about. So, and it reminds me a little bit of the River book because the words get carried, the words live on. And that again is telling us words matter. And we're giving that message to kids. And again, it's a little bit of a little tease for what I'm going to do later, my little bit at the end, which is it's one thing to read and read in a way that we're comfortable and we develop a joy of reading and we model that for our children and our friends. And then the next step is, okay, I can read. Now it's my turn. It's my turn to tell my story, just like the boy who speaks like the river and the people, including kids, who are able to talk on that phone, on that phone that's not even connected.
Yeah.
David, your third one?
Okay, well, I'm going visual today.
Good.
Let's see. This is a great one. Exclamation mark. And exclamation mark didn't fit in. He stood out from the very beginning. It didn't matter what he did. He stood out here, he stood out. Oh, he stood out here. He stood out there. Is it clear enough?
Yep.
And the only time he didn't stand out was when he was sleeping. All his other friends. But again, he didn't want to stand out, right? So that's what happens. You close yourself in, you smash yourself down, you cut off what makes you you. So our task is to draw out what makes the person who they are. He just wasn't like everybody else. And he did this and that and that. And then he met this person. See? And this person, of course, was full of questions. And then exclamation mark said, stop. And then he was really impressed. So you could just do a yelling thing, simple as that. He didn't know he had it in him. How'd you do that? Can you do it again?
Mm-hmm.
So he starts small, and then he goes all the way he can do anything he likes. Look what I can do. And there you go with that. Again, it's simple. It's confidence. You just have to develop the confidence in the process. You have to develop the confidence in the words you're using. You expand the words you use to make bigger words. You use a few more words to make a sentence. And there you go. And before you know it, you're writing all sorts of stuff. Over to you there, Mo.
Okay, I put just in the chat something funny that I remembered because your exclamation mark, of course, is about punctuation. And even punctuation is worth paying attention to with kids. You know, you see something, you see a sign somewhere, and is there the use of an exclamation mark, question mark, comma? A comma is like a pause, a period is a long pause, a dash is interruption. So I just gave you a joke thing, but it works because it's the same sentence, but it changes entirely if you look at the punctuation. It's a little old for little kids, but still for the older ones might get a kick out of it. Woman without her man is nothing, or woman without her man is nothing. So they mean the opposite. So it shows you, it's proof positive that punctuation changes things, right? Like, because punctuation, in a way, it directs the sentence. It's actually I love punctuation. Okay, so that's it for punctuation. The last one, this is the last of our 6. It's a book I think I already mentioned last week, and it was on the reading list because I wrote it. It's of all my books, it's the one actually that does have to do with learning disability. And it was also like Heather's book. Mine came out of a newspaper article too. So that's another thing, looking at the newspaper, right? Or if it's not the newspaper, listening to the news, discussing it. Very, very important part of literacy. You know, what's going on in Afghanistan, the Canadian election, should Trudeau have called an election? You can discuss this, right? Fun. But anyway, there was a tragic story in the paper, must be about 10 years ago now, about a family in Toronto. They had a son who had autism, and they received a hate letter. And it was a cruel letter. The letter was like, why do you even let that kid outside? He makes so much noise. It's like, it was horrible, right? And the people who received the letter went to the media with it, and it made the news across Canada. And it really stayed with me as like a shocking story. So I used it as the basis of a story. And I had the question of the narrator, who's going to be my narrator? And I used a boy he's the cousin of a child who has received that letter. And his family has received the letter. And he's ashamed of his cousin. So it's kind of an interesting way for me to work with that story. One of my friends whose son, who's now must be about close to 20, who's on the spectrum, she helped me a lot with this book because she went over it to make sure that, like, you know, I got things right and that I handled it in a respectful way. So this is actually, with your permission, David, it's 2 minutes to 8. It's a good moment for me to move into something about writing, and that's a point, but stop me, David, but let me just make my move, and then if you want to stop me or anything.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
So something that David and I were talking about today is, and this is a big issue now in literature, right? We want inclusivity. So we don't only want to read hold on, how's my spelling? Because it's getting dark in the room I'm in. Inclusivity, there you go. People need to read about other people who are like them, right? So if you're gay, you don't only want to read about straight characters, right? We really need to we have to be much more diverse. And there are so many people with learning disabilities, kids and adults, but we're talking mostly about the kids tonight. We need to give kids those stories too. Right? What are they going to read about another kid who's like a student, or a kid who's like rebellious but smart, or whatever, very good in school but not trying? We need to give kids the real truth about themselves also. So for all of you who are here tonight, maybe there are some kids with disabilities who are listening, I'm not sure. There are certainly parents. There's those of you that are working in the field. You all have access to the voice. You all know what it's like. Right? And that means you have story material. And that's how I look at stuff. Like everything in my life, I mean, I'm a little bit like a buzzard, like looking for, you know, roadkill kind of thing. But everything that happens, I'm like, that's great for a story. That's amazing. You know, one of my friends, actually another Canadian children's writer, Heather Camlott, I've been watching and trying to help her a bit. They lost their dog. It was a rescue dog. and they found the dog 2 weeks later. So it's posted on Facebook, the dog's back. And I was like, wow, that's great. And I wrote a note to Heather and said, I hope one of these days, I know she'd been through a lot of sorrow and she's been sleepless. One of these days you'll be able to write about it. And she wrote me back and said, I've already been writing about it. Because that's what writers do. We turn everything into material. Okay. So my idea for this evening is to do a 2-part. I even have not that I want to take the whole thing away from David. So David, stop me at any point. Anybody stop me. So what I have planned is kind of 2 things. One is writing in general. I got 4 little tips for you about the kind of work you can do with writing. And then I want to talk about actually writing a story, just to give you a few very basic pointers. So I know, because I've been in touch with some of you, like in messages and so on, and I know that there's some writers in the crowd, okay, or people who've been working on stories. So what I don't have time to do is be a writing coach and say, I'm going to meet with you every week and help you with it. But there are places that you can go to get this kind of help. I'll just give you a couple of quick resources, okay? We have the Quebec Writers Federation. It is amazing, okay?
Those people are great.
Yeah, they're great. You can call, you can look on the website. Just today, they announced their next set of writing workshops. One of them is writing for children. Lori Weber is doing it, a good friend of David's and mine as well, another local children's writer. She's doing writing for teens. So it's a really good thing to take a course, not only because you learn, but you learn as much from the other students as you learn from whoever's teaching it. So I recommend Quebec Writers Federation. For those of you, and I know at least one person here tonight is in this situation, if you have, let's say, a manuscript, right? Maybe you've been writing something, you want to publish it. The Quebec Writers Federation, also known as QWF, has what's called a mentorship program. You could consider, now you're not going to definitely be accepted, because I think they only do 4 to 6 people get accepted every year. Look into the mentorship program. I think it's coming up soon, the applications to be mentored. And then you would get your own writing coach, right? Because to get a writing coach, which is, to me, you need support unless you've been really working at it for a long time, and I don't know, or maybe you're just amazing and your first draft is fabulous. But for most of us, that's not how it works. I rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. I spend so much more time rewriting than the first draft. You have no idea. It's hard work, and I think you need to learn a little bit of how to do it. So I really am a big fan of QWF. Okay, so I'm going to proceed, if it's okay, with the 4 little pointers I have on developing your writing, and then I'm going to talk about making a book. Okay, David, do you want to say anything before I go on my roll?
No, I think I'm all right with this.
Okay, jump in at any point. And others, because I know I get kind of excited about stuff, and I feel like I want to deliver this. So I checked with David before, and we had planned, okay, we'll talk about some books, and then I'll do this thing. Okay. But in the chat too, you can ask about this, task David, maybe there's other things you want to have more book suggestions. Okay. I was also going to show you, before I do my thing, a small thing to show you. I mentioned to you that last time I said that my boyfriend has 2 kids. Well, he has 5 kids, but 2 that still live with him half the time. And the youngest has recently been diagnosed with a problem with reading that's connected to a learning disability. She's getting help, it's getting better, but she still doesn't like to read. So she's kind of been my pilot project with all of this, because I'm trying everything, including graphic novels, which is going super well. I haven't read it to her yet, but I just read it myself. A beautiful French book. I have it on my desktop. It's in French. It's a graphic novel, and it's actually about, believe it or not, breasts. And it's called Les Seins, because that's the word in French. I'll look, you know what? When David's talking afterwards, I'll see if I can find you the topic. Les Seins, I'm not finding it easily, but you could look it up. Les Seins, S-E-I-N-S, which is breasts in French. Les Seins pèsent lourd. I think it's something like that. Breasts are heavy. It is gorgeous. Okay. And it's a perfect book to read with a teenage girl. It gets into some really important issues, for instance, related to feminism. Okay. So this week, my boyfriend's on a fishing trip and I'm with the kids. So I initiated this thing, which is we're doing a diary. Okay. And the other one, the older one hasn't got an issue, but he's not interested in too much in writing, or certainly never kept a diary. Anyway, here we've been doing it every day. Okay. And all they have to do is make a comment about their day. And the funniest, because I wanted to make sure that I had permission. So I will read you something from the dog, because there's a very cute dog named Pepper. So last weekend we were camping with the kids, and Pepper, where I'm going to get to my Pepper page. Hold on. Pepper. Okay, so the kids wrote, I said, what would Pepper say? So I'll just read to you, because Pepper gave me his permission to read his diary. I saw intruders and defended the territory. This was at the campsite. The boy put on my leash in a hurry to hold me back. The intruders left in fear. They said they couldn't hear over my barking. It's true. That's what the intruders said. I ate 2 hamburgers. They will not let me have spaghetti sauce ever again. Indeed, the daughter even made her phone background a picture of me with spaghetti sauce all over my face and my tongue hanging out. Okay, so that's it. So just to show you that you can do fun stuff, and that even teenagers who are 16 and 17 and really don't want to, like, they don't want to hear about
ultra serious, eh?
Yeah, they don't want to hear my stuff about writing or lessons about writing, but you can hook them just by, in this case, by laughing. What would Pepper say? I think it's actually pretty funny about Pepper. Okay, so here comes my lesson. At least I amused myself. I hope you found it funny too. Okay, my lesson is 4 points, okay? Let's say you want to start writing. This is before you're going to write your book, your novel that's going to make you famous, okay? The only thing to do with writing is write. You're going to have to write a ton, okay? To be a writer, you need to write. You can't just talk about being a writer, you have to write. I think I told you, I wake up every morning, I write 3 pages. Everyone thinks I'm bonkers, but you know what? I'm a writer, and that's what we do, because I need to keep my muscles limber. So then you might say, what do you write? So that's my 4 points. Number 1, okay? You can write your observations, okay? These are very interesting things to write. You write about the dog, you write about the smells. By the way, under observations, the 5 senses, it's not number 5, we're still on point 1. You write about what you taste. So it's using, and it's also the use of details. And if you write stuff down in, let's say I do in my journal, I may come back to it later to use in the story. If Heather Camlott didn't write notes about how she felt when the dog ran away, if she waits 2 years, she won't be able to do as good a job, right? So record, use writing as a way to record stuff, use observation. This is just one kind of writing. Number 2 kind of writing is a fancy word, which is catharsis. I'll just tell it to you quickly. Comes from Greek. Some of you may know it. It basically means, and here's a not fancy definition, dump your emotions on the page, okay? I didn't have the easiest morning this morning. I just dumped it on the page. I just used a page and a half to say why I was upset with things. I have some sick people around me, and I'm going back to school next week, and whatever. I dumped it. And guess what? I felt way better. Okay, that's called catharsis. You should try it. You're in a terrible mood. You're mad. You're like frustrated. Write it out. It helps. You could also write when you're happy. Interestingly, people don't usually write when they're happy. They phone their friends, okay? It's cool to write when you're happy. Otherwise, you're going to read your book and think, was I ever depressed, right? Maybe it was not that bad. Number 3 is reflection, okay? Reflection, some people see as the highest form of writing, okay? Personally, it's fine. I'm a teacher. I should be encouraging reflection. Reflection, like in French, réfléchir. Let's think about stuff, right? So reflection is like, I don't know, what do I think about Afghanistan? Someone said to me yesterday, now we're going to have to let all those Afghanis into Canada. And I'm like, yeah, we have to let them in because that's our responsibility, right? So maybe you want to reflect on it. Maybe you do feel like we can't handle any more refugees. I don't know. Reflect, read up, think about it, find out about what what's going on. Who are the Taliban? We've been talking about that in this house here. We've been reading the stuff in the Gazette, and then we're Googling things and trying to find out more. That's great. We're getting people, because we said it's not just about deciphering words, it's about thinking. And we think by discussing things and réfléchir, right? So you can use writing to reflect. It doesn't have to be that you're debating with you, just see what you think. The very famous writer, Flannery O'Connor, she said about writing, I read what I write to see what I think. Really, I always love that line. Number 4, my personal favorite, intuition. Now, most people would not agree that it's the greatest form of writing, but I love it. I need it. Okay, so this is writing about your dreams. There's lots. These are some examples. Writing about dreams. The example I gave you last week, using words in a non sort of traditional linear fashion, right? So, you know, like there used to be when I was a kid, like a poem that looks like the shape of a heart. It's called emblematic verse or shaped poetry. Okay, so those kinds of things, stream of consciousness, just let it out. Okay, stream of consciousness. I'll give you a couple more examples of this. A letter, what we, by the way, never send it, called the unsent letter. Okay, I don't know, the boyfriend who broke your heart when you were 16, right? Write to him and tell him what a jerk he was and how you never got over it and you wonder what he's up to, but don't send it. Don't send it. That's why it's called the unsent letter, right? The fight you should have had with somebody. Again, it's best not to send these unsent letters. Because you're really writing it more for yourself than anybody else, right? So basically, it's like using words, but not in the way we usually, as in like I'm writing a school project, I'm writing an entry in a diary. It's about breaking the rules. Right? Let's say you want to write, I do sometimes swear in my diary, but let's say you want to use a bad word, the whole page. You want to take your whole page and write a bad word. Who says you can't? Right? So basically, this kind of writing is very freeing. And the last example I have is something that if you're really good for, if you ever have writer's block, it's making a list, because we do this all the time. In fact, it's really kind of an interesting topic. Lists, shopping lists, to-do lists, all of your bucket list, right? Just make a list. All the things you want for Christmas, all the things if you had a little more money you would buy, all the things you want to do over the weekend, all the things you don't want to do over the weekend, right? So lists, the thing about a list is very freeing. And what I do with my students is I say, make a sheet 1 to 100. Not a short list. And now say all the things you want to do this week. And now you need 100, but wait, they're allowed to repeat. Remember we talked about repetition before, right? That it gives kids a sense of mastery with reading. Thing about repetition with an exercise like this is if you say what you want to do this weekend and you repeat go swimming 15 times, well, you know what? You should probably make sure you go swimming this weekend, right? So sometimes the list stuff like teaches us. I find, and I think I mentioned it last week too, I do this thing every morning. It takes about half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour. I write 3 pages, but I'm different at the end of 3 pages. Something has shifted. Like I told you, I was in a crabby mood this morning. I wrote, it didn't take me 3, a page, and I finished 3, but after a page and a little bit, I was like, man, I feel much better. I got it out, right? Okay, so there you have my 4 little bits of advice. Maybe because I can catch my breath a touch before I do stories. David, you look like you're thinking something. Your face is very nice on my screen.
I'm always thinking stuff, but I love what you said about this stuff. And it goes back to the, I Talk Like a River book as well. The exclamation mark book, another book that I brought along, Frindle, where they just agree that they're going to call a pen a Frindle. And what I said at the beginning, you said break the rules, and you don't have to know them really to break them. You know, there are certain people, I'm sure, who want to move ahead and get professional in the writing. But for our purpose, I mean, certainly for purposes of the MCLD tonight, just to get people, the kids, let's call them kids, out there and feeling comfortable with words, putting them down, and those tips, I mean, lists, observations, catharsis. You don't have to tell them it's catharsis. It's just like,
Yeah,
what are you
dump your
feeling?
emotions. Yeah,
Dump it out. Use a word. Angry.
And you know what?
All those.
For kids who have trouble actually writing the words, like these kids downstairs, if I said, write your diary, there's no way they're going to do it. But if we're sitting at dinner, and I said this last night, okay, it's time for us to do the diary. And by the way, they could have said to me, I'm like, what am I, the kind of stepmother here? They could have said, Monique, we're sick of your dumb diary. I was almost close to thinking they were going to say that, but they did it. And I was the scribe. Right? They just spoke. Oh, I think it's stupid. I'm like, okay, I think it's stupid. Right? And then everyone's laughing about it. Be the scribe. Just be willing. Show them that you might be surprised with how these things go. I was a little bit surprised. I was going to show you, talking about break the rules. I don't know if I mentioned this book last time. I don't know if I had it on my desk. It's for grownups. It's the best book I've ever read. Girl, Woman, Other. It won the Booker in 2019. There's no punctuation. It's just run-on sentences, the whole book. So break the rules, right? And it won the Booker Prize. So, it's fun to experiment with writing, and loosen it up. You know what? They're going to go to school. They're going to have to do it right and write a paragraph. I mean, I'm going to be doing that at Marinopolis next week, but we need to have other ways of using language too. It's not only about school. It's not only about publication. It's really about like expressing ourselves. Okay.
There are many, many roads to where we want to go. There are many entrances to it.
And many places where people want to go. Like, my thing always is like, for me, I like the idea of writing for publication. I kind of, once you do it, you kind of get hooked. And I think of myself as a writer. I'm very proud I make money from my writing. And you know what? You can, if you really want to, but you're going to have to work hard. And just to tell you, like, my background is, I always wanted to be a writer. I wrote 5 or 6 manuscripts before I made my first sale. And that's a lot. It was very discouraging years. It took me years till I made my first book sale. And I kept every rejection letter that I got. I was rejected by every publisher in Canada for those first 5 or 6 manuscripts. And
that must have been tough.
Yeah. And the only reason that I can say I'm a writer is because I didn't give up. And my own father, I often say this one I'll tell my own students, my own dad said to me, like, give up. At the time I was already writing for the Gazette, and I teach at Marinopolis. My dad said, you're an okay teacher. They didn't fire you. You write for the Gazette. Like, you're not going to ever make it as a children's book writer. Give up. You keep getting rejected. And I didn't listen. And that really was, I'm happy I didn't listen. And
that's the type of strength that we have to pass on to anybody who listens to this webinar.
Yeah.
Never give up.
Yeah.
Try a different way.
Yeah.
Make it simple, make it fun, help out one way or another, lead, push, set an example.
And we can't give up on each other either, or our kids, or the people that we love. And it's fun, just a little ending of the story is that my dad has heard me do like a talk about writing, and I tell that story. And now he says, I never said that to you. I'm like, totally, because I so remember, I took it in so profoundly. It really, like, I thought maybe he's right, but I couldn't, and that's the only, and I was telling someone today, a good friend of mine, my grandfather was a pretty well-known painter in Holland and whatever. It's like part of my story, because that's how my family survived the Holocaust, because of his artwork. Anyway, complicated, but kind of an amazing story. And I remember my grandfather telling me he knew I wanted to be a writer. And he said, you need this much talent and this much hard work. And I was just a little kid, and I was telling a friend about it today. Yeah, we all have this much talent. You can all do it, but are you willing to do this much hard work? I can tell you, I am. You got to be a bit of a kook to really stick with it, as it's hard work. But I find it fun. I'm hooked. I heard this thing that our brains are meant, They're built to solve problems. And for me, this is what writing is. It's a problem. It's like today I spent a good hour trying to go from one paragraph to another. And I do it in different ways. I walk around the house. I clean a dish. I make tea. But I'm like, okay, I got to get it. And I sat down. I got it. But it's not always the most fun, but it's good for the brain. Okay. So for those that really want to do a story, right? Like you want to do a book. First of all, I say, do what I do, which is get practice, try those 4 styles of journal writing, okay? Work on those because your book will need observation. Your book will need emotion. Your book will need thoughts, réfléchir, and maybe your book will have some zany intuition in it too, like a dream or who knows what, okay? So when I talk about these following steps, okay, or tips, you could do them for a picture book. You could do them for middle grade. You could do them if you want to write for adults. Okay. For all of these, I'm just making it like basic. Okay. And I see that it's already 8:21, but it doesn't matter. I can do it in 5 minutes. Okay. And we'll still have time for talking, for questions. Okay. So the first thing that I had written down is beginning, middle, and end. There has to be movement in a story. You can't, unless you want to do your whole story, I am stuck. Even if you said I'm stuck in an elevator alone, it's got to move, even if the elevator doesn't move, right? Something has to happen. Otherwise, it's not a story. I'm stuck in an elevator. I'm stuck in an elevator. We need to have movement. Okay. So something has to change. There has to be a shift. It can be a small change. Okay. It's funny because I wasn't planning to use the elevator thing, but I have a bit of claustrophobia and I have been stuck in an elevator. And this is a bit embarrassing to tell you, but I already get hot flashes because I'm old. The time I got stuck in the elevator, I was so friggin' boiling. I had to strip down. I had to take off my clothes. Luckily, the elevator door didn't open at the bad moment, but I was like dripping. I had to take off. I wasn't stark naked, but down to like whatever, not much. Okay. So, but that's a kind of a story, I suppose. Okay, the next thing which ties in. So you need beginning, middle, and end. There has to be movement. You need trouble. I just gave you the trouble in my elevator story. Claustrophobia, boiling, the only way out is to take off the clothes or whatever it is. So we all have trouble. If you look, everyone has different kinds of trouble. If you're raising a kid who's on the spectrum, if you're raising a kid with all kinds of it's a particular kind of trouble. Right? What's that like for a kid in school who's lots of kids get bullied for lots of reasons. I'm opposed to bullying. I have deep feelings about the subject, but man, it makes great stories because it's trouble. So don't be afraid of trouble and don't be afraid. This is my motto in school is use it. You've had crap happen to you. Crap has happened to your kids. Use it, but change it up to protect the innocent. Okay. So you don't have to write about your kid per se. You can write about a different kid. You can change it from a girl to a boy, change the color of the hair, change the city, do whatever you want, but be careful. Although my experience is people don't recognize themselves in books anyhow. I've done it a few times where I write about someone and then they read the book, haven't changed it that much. And they never even go like, oh, I guess that person's based on me. They can't tell themselves. Okay. It's kind of funny. Okay. So use trouble. Now, happy endings are dead. Well, I won't say dead. Happy endings are out. Okay. We cannot have a happy ending in a story. That's like the fairy tales, everyone lived happily ever after. Nope. Okay. But this is what you are allowed to have. In fact, you should have this. We should have growth. People, just like in real life, people need to change a little bit. Like if someone said to me, Monique, be a little bit less noisy, it's not really going to happen. I might try for 10 minutes, but I'll get noisy again, right? But maybe something could happen, right? Maybe, and this actually did happen to me. I had a trouble with my vocal cords and I had to not speak. Trouble. What if you, and then maybe the person grows a little bit. Maybe they're a little bit, don't talk quite so much, although it was a few years ago and I back to full speed talking. But the idea that growth is the best thing we can ask for, right? We don't need a happy ending. Not any of us are going to have such a happy ending anyhow, right? Technically. But if we grow while we're here, that's worth it. That's all the trouble that we have to go through is worth it for growth. Okay, a few more tips because I see some of you looking like you're really learning, which is making me happy. Okay, use dialogue. Okay, dialogue, which means people talking, right? And you can watch, it has to, did I miss that? Okay, and talking, people talking, it has to sound realistic. So you have like an older woman in your story, she can't sound like she's a 16-year-old, right? You have a really smart kid, he has to use the right kind of language. You have a kid who's, whatever, a rebellious kid has to sound rude enough, right? So how you learn this is by listening in. Okay, listen in, you develop an ear for voice. Dialogue is very important. Okay, using your characters. You have to have strong, interesting characters. They have to feel real. They have to be complex. Okay, watch people around you. Take notes on them. That's how I learn about character. Use foils. I'm going to teach you that one super quickly. Guess we're going to have to go a little bit longer because it's 8:26. Foils are when people are really different. Okay, so for instance, if you have like someone shy with someone really outgoing, if you put two of those characters together, it already adds interest, right? Because what's going to happen? How will the shy one be around the really outgoing one? How will the outgoing one be around the shy person, right? A person who's very a rebellious kid with a kid who follows all the rules, right? This is perfect situation for stories, the use of foils. And now that I've mentioned this to you, when you're reading stories, you're going to notice it all the time.
Kind of like this webinar.
Yeah. Oh, very funny. Yeah, you're the profound one, and I'm just like zooming. Okay.
I'm profound. No, I'm quiet.
Okay. Setting. Setting is place and time. Work with setting. When I started for writing for kids, at the time, most of the books for kids were kind of set in some kind of neutral place, like, I don't know, a name, clear view, name of a town with a mall and view of the lake or something. I don't know, it could be anywhere. There's been a real movement towards particular settings. If you know your spot, write about it. We all know our spots. It could also be a childhood spot or a place that you go to in the summer, or go do research. That's actually another good point. I find I really can't write anything without doing research. Like the same thing, the book Hate Mail, I had to learn a lot about the autism spectrum, and a lot about parents and about the people that would write the hate letter and so on. I did a lot of research. So don't be afraid to do research, because we got to, like, I never realized that when I was a kid who wanted to write. I just thought you go into your room and write a book and it would be easy. And then really the most important tip I can offer you is this one: rewrite. You're going to have to rewrite the hell out of whatever you do, because your first draft is crap. Everyone's first draft is crap. And I've been through the process so many times because I've published quite a lot of books now. When I'm writing my first draft, I know I feel miserable and sad and I think I have no talent, but I've done it like, more than 30 times now. So I'm like, oh yeah, this stage, this is when I think I'm lousy and miserable and have no talent. But if I keep working at it, I start to think, maybe I'm not quite so lousy. Maybe I have some talent.
That's going to happen on the small scale as well, with the first person, with the person you're trying to lead into this writing, that, they're not going to have the experience of, oh, I'm at this stage. They're simply overwhelmed by, this is the stage that I'm always at.
Yeah.
And work through it and move on to something and do it again, or do something different, or pull out a different subject or way of looking at it.
David, sorry that I keep jumping in, but I'm
No,
but I want to say thank you for bringing it back to that point, because this is a little bit, what I just did is a bit for some of the adults who've been asking, like, I want to write, and what are some things, but it's very good to, like, if we're working towards the ending tonight, like, this is about helping kids, of course, right? And it doesn't have to be for publication. We have to just show them that they have stories and that we're interested in their stories. And you can write it down for them, like I said, as the scribe. If they start to have the confidence to write a little bit, they don't have to write, no one's saying they have to write a book and they have to finish it by next week. Let them start small. Let them write, like we did last week. We did 1 word a day. How was your day? 2 words, because how do you want tomorrow to be? Do that every single day. You're
Hmm.
modeling that words matter. And if you laugh, if the kids write, when the kids here were writing Pepper's diary, it was funny to me about the intruder. And you know what they did? They started rewriting it. They added the word indeed, or, something, there was another word that was changed. And that's writing. They were rewriting, right? Without me having to write the list. Writing means rewriting. I did that for you guys, but you can model it. You can talk to kids and say, or you say the word intruder. I don't know about you, but I love the word intruder. You know who the intruders were? It was some guys trying to sell us firewood. And they actually did say, we can't hear you because your dog is barking too loud, which we cracked up because, that's what dogs do. They bark. What can we do? Make him bark more quietly, right? Anyway, everything's an opportunity for a story. What if you would write a story? I'm busy, so I'll give you this one. What if you would write the story about this, your dad's girlfriend is babysitting for a week, and you're the dog reporting on what happened, what really happened. Was she a horrible cook? And, is she obsessed with writing all the time? I don't know. There's all kinds of funny things, right? So think about also point of view, who's telling your story, But I think the main thing is if kids realize that we value this and we value them and we value, like I said, their stories, their words, you're on the right track.
There you go.
I see Pam has a question. Are there more? Do you recommend self-publishing over getting an agent, and how important is the query letter? Okay, so I'll answer it quickly. I do not recommend self-publishing, although a lot of people are doing it, and sometimes it works out, and then a publisher buys it, or they sell a lot themselves. A lot of the self-publishing, this is the bad word for it, is called vanity press. And it's when you're self-published, nobody's editing your stuff. It could be a horrible piece of junk and it gets published. I wouldn't go that route. And then they're going to charge you a lot of money to publish your book too.
It can be costly for the individual.
Yeah, it's a bit of a racket. On the other hand, there are people that work. They make it work. And by the way, Pam, I just saw in the QWF in their listing of new courses, I think it's a weekend one just on self-publishing. So this is a person who knows about it and who's done it successfully.
They're giving the course. They'll give you the straight up dope. Yeah, they'll give you the good stuff.
And then there's a bit more in Pam's thing. Agent, you don't need an agent in Canada. I have an agent, and I didn't even get her for the beginning of most of my career. I've had her maybe for 4 years now. Agent takes 15% of whatever I earn. She's gotten me some good contracts, but I managed very well without her, and it's a little bit of work gets done by somebody else. When you're starting, you don't need an agent. I might even be able to manage without an agent now. But in Canada, you don't need one. I wouldn't, unless you're really sitting on what you think is a blockbuster and there's going to be all the big publishing companies around the world want your book. I don't feel that way about my stuff. So I don't know. I wouldn't go with the agent right away. It's true that if you have an agent, they may get big companies like Scholastic might not look at a book if it didn't have an agent. So that's the one thing. The query letter, I can do that in a minute with you. The query letter shouldn't be more than a page. And in case you don't know what it means, it's a letter that goes to the publisher. Say who you are, make it interesting. I am a parent, or I work with MCLD, say who you are. And then in a paragraph, tell them about your story. And usually a good idea to compare it to what something else that's it's like girl, woman, other for teenagers or something like that, right? Show them, or it's John Klassen or Mo Willems meets, I don't know, Godzilla, right? So those kinds of things are good, but don't go more than a page. And yeah, the query letter, the more important is that the manuscript isn't most stuff gets trashed. My publisher, Orca, gets 200 manuscripts a day. That's a lot.
A day.
Yeah. Oh, they're getting them. They come in the mail. So they go,
Yeah.
someone is hired in the office. The first
Unsolicited.
person. Yeah, the first person, it's called the slush pile. And the first person who goes through them is probably, 20 years old working in the office and knows enough to see 18 mistakes on page 1. I'm not going to bother with that one. Right? So if you don't get, usually you don't get a second chance with the publisher. If they reject you, they're not going to look at your project 10 times more. So, oh, I made it much better. Now look at it again. You make sure it's in the best possible shape, which is why I think if you're serious about this, you should think about, joining a writer's group. People do this, I came at it a different way. I'm a teacher and I didn't want to join a group because I'm very bad at being in a group and not being the teacher. You might have noticed. But for a lot of people, it works great, but then find people who are going to tell you the honest truth about your project and are going to give you good advice and are good, kind, smart people. But QWF can help you with that too. Are there more?
MCLD can help with people who need their kids to read and write.
Yeah. Which makes me think that maybe for the MCLD, I think there's some people from the executive, maybe there is a QWF link. Maybe you could work on something together with them. Maybe there'd be a course, stories related to these themes that we're talking about. Might be something to think about.
Yep.
Do you guys have things that you're wondering about? Because it's 8:36. Questions, comments? Time went super fast.
Can we follow you, Monique, in any way?
Yeah, I have a website.
Yeah.
So I have a
there you go.
website, which I'll give it to you. And you can contact me on the website. But here's my email. What I wish I had time is, and when I'm retired, I will have a bit more time, but I'm not quite retired. It's to read people's stuff, someone says, oh, I'll read, it's 5 pages. I can't because I teach full time. So I'm God, I'm going back on Monday. Thank you for the webinar. It was great. That was Joanna. That's nice. Anyone with questions? I think we would feel like we really did a good job if you had a question. Or something you're wondering about, or I'm looking here. Who is this person? Blanche. It looks to me like a person there who's thinking things. I'm usually pretty good at looking at a face. Blanche, I see wheels turning in your face. So what's up there, Blanche?
Okay, you're quite right. Wheels were turning, but it had to do more with the previous presentation. And I was a bit concerned. I really liked all the activities you gave us, all the suggestions, but I also felt a little bit something missing, and that's for some kids, even if you do everything you've done, they may love reading, but they still won't be readers. And as a parent, teacher, whatever, one shouldn't feel guilty.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because I guess I'm so raw on reading that I forget sometimes that it's I'm almost like a religious proselytizer for reading, right? Everybody must join the club, but you're quite right. Maybe there's some that just won't.
Well, but I still think that the suggestions you gave, I think all parents should be trying them. I think they're terrific teachers, everything, but just they don't always work.
Every once in a while, it doesn't work, eh?
But you know what I would say, Blanche, because I hate, I don't give up, right? I'm that kind of person. So, okay, maybe it's not reading and writing, but I think people need to be creative. I think kids need to be creative. I think old people, we all need to be creative. Let them have a garden, let them cook, let them hum music, write songs. It doesn't matter. I just think it makes us most human is when we're creating things. What do you say, Blanche?
Totally agree. Totally agree with that.
Where did you teach, Blanche?
I taught for the, what's now Riverside School Board, out on the South Shore.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I have friends at Riverside, so.
Okay.
Mary Eva is one of my friends. Maybe you know her.
No, but I've been out of it for a while.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for making that point. It's good because I am sometimes dangerously enthusiastic.
I wouldn't say that, but there's just that other side
Yeah,
to it.
no, it's good. It's very good. And I hope that part is being recorded too. In a way, it's a nice place to end. And I'm glad I was right about looking at your face. Anybody else? I'm looking at the faces. Do you have a question? It's like at the wedding. Do you have any comments, or forever hold your peace?
I'll put in my 2 cents to end it if you want. Canscape is another place that budding writers can go, and that is CANSCAIP. Maybe you could write that in. I don't happen to have a keyboard.
I did, and I should have mentioned it too. And I was looking at my
No
email
problem.
before,
Listen.
and I was a reminder from Canscape.
UWF, they're brilliant.
Canscape does like a seminar every fall. So it means there'll be one coming up. I think it's October, November. And last year was online. It's great. It's like, I don't know how much it costs, maybe $100. If you're a teacher, you might be able, I always got mine covered from school as professional development. I learned a lot by going to their workshops. A lot. One of the things I learned was this guy, Kevin Major, who talked about setting. He really made me realize, don't set your stories anymore in clear view. Set your stories in a location that you know and care about. Is there a hand up, Pam? I thought I saw Pam's hand up, but we can't, your microphone is off.
Unmute.
Got it. Okay.
There you go.
I had heard that publishers do not like to have like a children's picture book that's illustrated. They
Yes.
like to choose their
Yes,
own
That's
illustrator.
absolutely true. That's I wish I had mentioned that. I should have mentioned that to you. That's a very basic thing. Some people who have like a particular brilliance, like Mo Willems, Mary Louise Gay, there's people, Matt James in The Funeral, there's people who can write and illustrate. They're the only ones who should be submitting like that. If you have a story, if you're like me, you're better at writing than making pictures, okay? Do not give it to your cousin. Do not do what some people do. Save all your money and spend $10,000 to hire an illustrator. Bad, bad, bad. Do not do it. Okay. It's absolutely true. You have a better chance of selling your manuscript without illustrations. Publishers have a roster of illustrators, and if they take your book, we make the prayer that they do. Okay. If they take your book, they will find the illustrator. Make sure that your book you got to be like thinking about political correctness now too. You got to be thinking about diversity, inclusiveness, all of those things. There is an interest in this whole issue of learning disabilities. Don't make everybody white in your story if you can help it. Even if you are just writing the text, you could make notes about the illustration, right? You could say, here, I need a kid with a green hat or something like that, if it matters. But everything that you can tell through words, tell it through words. Oh, a picture book in general, not more than 900 words.
Right.
If a 2,000 word picture book will not
No,
sell.
too many.
You saw how short the ones, like the ones David read to you tonight. Some of those books are 200 words, 300 words. I don't know. You could go. The other thing to do is go to Babar, sit on the floor and look at the picture books. Buy a few too while you're at it. Really,
We got 1 million, and you don't have to buy. We have a couch. You can sit and read, and also don't
2
forget
crates full.
libraries.
Yeah.
Libraries. All the librarians are dying to see you.
Yeah.
And they are huge, huge, huge resource.
And
so anybody who sees this webinar ever in the future, don't forget libraries. They're everywhere, and they're full of knowledgeable people.
One more thing to tell you. This is especially Pam, because you're asking those questions. So I just wrote crack the code. Never let the adults, this is true for YA and for middle grade as well. Never let the adults solve the problem. The kids have to solve the problem. It cannot be, I'm being bullied, I will call my dad and mom and they'll fight with the bully. No, my mother actually tried to do that, fight with the bully, and it really went badly. Okay, I mean, it's funny when you think about it, but
don't call the dog.
In your story, the kid has to find the solution for himself or herself. That's super, super important. Do not let the adults fix the problem, just like in real life, right? Which brings us back again to this thing about, kids with special needs. It's not like we're going to write the papers, we're going to do their homework, we're going to get them through high school. We got to give them the tools so that they can do it. We're behind them. We love them. We support them. We'll give them all the help we can, but give them the feeling, again, that feeling of mastery, right? I think the little engine that could, I think I can, I think I can. Maybe that's the perfect place to end tonight.
I love the older version of that.
Which is what?
I've given it as a gift a couple of times.
The little engine that could?
No, it's about like going off into life. And as you go through life, you'll stop at many stations and you'll have to make many choices. And it's based on the little engine that could. And it's repeated, like, but you'll know that you can. And yeah, it's a lovely book.
You should say, I will look for that.
I stole it back from my daughter.
I realized some of the things that I'd been putting in the chat only went to Pam. I'm sorry. I'm looking if there's anything that I should be sharing. Oh yeah, I put my email. My website, if anyone cares. .com. So I guess it looks like we're winding down.
And
I've been trying to say how much I have enjoyed these 2 workshops. They have been fabulous. I suppose I have a very personal interest, but I still, I have the joy of reading, and it's been wonderful to hear the 2 of you are so inspiring. Your love of books and your love of reading, and no wonder Babar's been around for 46 years.
No,
Cheers to you. Cheers.
35, Pam.
35? Okay. 35.
46 is coming up.
Okay. Thank you so, so much, 2 of you. We really appreciate you coming.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and we're hoping
we're both of us here for all of you personally all the time. Give us a ring, fax us, email us, go on the website, come and see us. It's a great place to come out here in Point Claire and just enjoy the scenery and drop in, read a book, put it down, read a book, pick it up, take it away, do what you like. I'm not here to sell books. I'm here to encourage you to read and to use the books to make your life better. Simple as that.
And I wanted to add that we were a small group tonight, but I felt like it was a very involved group, even just looking at the faces, like I would look in a classroom though with like 35 of you. So thanks for being together with us on such it was a warm summer night when we should all be eating ice cream. I'm about to go and do myself. And I hope that other people will be able to watch this and get some of the fun that we had tonight on the recording as well.
For sure. That's the beauty of having the recording.
Good.
Thanks so much, guys.
Okay, great. Bye, everybody.
Never give up.
Enjoy your back to school, Monique. I know how depressing it can be.
Yeah, well, I'm okay with it because you know what? I drove by Marinopolis today and I saw the kids and they're so excited to be out there back. You could feel it, they're all wearing masks outdoors. They're very they're going to be good.
Okay. Wishing you a great year.
Yeah, Pam, you know how to reach me. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.